He slices, he dices. Look at all my poor champions on the floor. Hello everyone, Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and with the buff to the new set, we are going to be farming the event dungeon occasionally. So I figured I'd actually make a video on teams for farming this event. So if you have not heard, as of probably around when this video goes live, I think Monday or Tuesday, there will be a patch, and the Chronophage set will be buffed. So we'll go over that buff quickly, and then we'll talk about 3 teams that I've built, but generally the premise behind the teams and champions where you might be able to sub them in. Maybe you can build them better than I have, or honestly, in some cases, you'll probably be building them worse than I have, because we're doing all this on my end game account. So the level 20 and the level 25 teams, you know, they're fine. They're 100% on my account, but they're certainly going to be more difficult for some people to build just because I have better gear and I have other things going for my account that you may not. So we'll talk about that as best we can, and we'll go over the gear and the dungeon. So let's talk about it. So this is the Chronophage set. It certainly looks good, and as you can see, it's been buffed pretty big. So you used to get 25% HP, 80% resistance, 10% speed, and 3% immutable stacks. Now you're going to get 60 points of resistance, 32% speed, and 3 immutable stacks. This basically has become, well, pinpoint with resistance. So where pinpoint gives you accuracy, you are now going to be getting resistance, and otherwise you are getting a ton of speed out of this set. And of course, you're getting the immutable stacks, which are going to protect you from skill cooldowns, lockouts, as opposed to pinpoint protecting you from CCs. So you're going to get 20 resistance for the level 1. You're going to get 10% speed from the level 2. You're going to get 20% resistance from the level 3, an immutable stack on 4, resistance on 5. Actually, I'm sorry, that's going to be 10% speed on 5. Then it's going to be immutable on 6, resistance on 7, 12% more speed on 8, and then a 3rd stack of immutable. Now, as far as how useful this is, I don't think immutable is as useful as this set probably would have been about a year and a half ago. It would be pre-mythic, basically, when lockout champions were the king of arena. That said, there are a couple places that you can get locked out of the cooldowns. Not a lot of them currently for PvE. I would not be surprised if we start to have more content. We have 7 new bosses coming up in the next 6 months or so. So we may be seeing some people that are going to lock you out soon as bosses, so this may become a very useful set. But simply being able to do 20 resistance and 10% speed on 2 accessories is huge. Pinpoint was already so good because of that 10% speed. Same with Fury actually having only that 5% speed, but that 40% accuracy on a 2-piece set, that those accessories have replaced almost every regular accessory that I have on my account, unless it was a triple roll speed or better. That is how picky I got with my accessories, because honestly, I could live with slightly worse stats on my ring, slightly worse stats on my amulet if I'm getting 10% extra speed on my champions. That's how important speed is in the game. So is this set going to be great? No, it's good, but it's not as good as Pinpoint. Pinpoint being accuracy was more universally useful, plus the anti-control more universally useful as well. Plus now we're talking about Merciless Gear, which is an endgame top of the line damage dealing set. You're talking about Pinpoint. You're talking about Protection, which was an absolutely amazing set. Stone Skin, still very, very important. So having a 2-piece flexible Chronophage set is going to be useful, and there's some champions this is going to thrive on. Basically, any champion where you don't necessarily need protection or cannot fit a 9-piece protection set on them, but you can do a 6-piece protection or some other set and then put Chronophage on there for at least a 2-piece set to get you that extra speed and that extra resistance. So for resistance champions, for example, ones you might be building in a lot of Stone Skin, for example, I could see a 4 or 6-piece Stone Skin as well as a 2-piece Chronophage or a 4-piece Chronophage, giving you a little bit of resistance. And honestly, once you're talking about 4-piece Stone Skin and 4-piece Chronophage, the immutable makes a little more sense because you can get locked out through Stone Skin. So that is one of the few vulnerabilities Stone Skin has. So having the Chronophage set, being able to block that, could prove to be useful on champions that you're going to put in Stone Skin, that you mostly just want them to make sure that they resist everything and don't get their skills on cooldown. But niche use, but it still doesn't mean that this is a bad set to farm, because again, speed kills in this game, and at some point in time you're going to want to get enough of these accessories where you're not going to be caring about spider accessories at all. If you're early game, that makes this not too bad. And to be fair, the dungeon does give you a couple of other pieces, and I'll talk about those, that might not be bad for a progression account, certainly not going to be amazing for an endgame account. But with the chronophage stuff and a 25% chance of getting accessories, the accessories could prove to be very, very useful for you as well. So let's talk about farming the set. So first of all, the other sets that you're going to get on this boss here is you're going to get some crit rates, you're going to get some accuracy, you're just curing some days, and some crit damage. The only one that is even really kind of viable towards the end game is going to be crit damage. And honestly, as we have grown with more and more 4-piece to 9-piece sets, the ability to do a 2-piece offset has become less and less useful. Crit damage set used to be the set that you would use if you didn't have the right cruel gear on your best nukers in the game. Now it's usable occasionally, but it's certainly not as good as it used to be. Accuracy is only as good until you can get enough perception to basically make it obsolete. And perception, once you start doing very well in faction wars, you should get a ton of it, because you're getting that or resilience gear every time you're farming any of those levels, and crafting gear is one of the better ways to get really good gear, just because of the volume you can craft, how directed it is, and the fact that you can use glyphs to make it better than normal. So yeah, accuracy falls off pretty quickly. Curing, not particularly great. Crit rate can only be very viable if you're really struggling to get to that 100% crit rate, but that hopefully falls off pretty quickly as you start farming more and more gear and you no longer need that extra crit rate. Days is one of the worst sets in the game. It has got a percentage chance to put somebody to sleep where they can then wake up if they take damage from some other source. Just not good. You're better off with stun or provoke gear. Days is bad. Just sell it. Do not keep it. Unless early on you get some pretty good offset pieces, eventually you're going to be so focused on getting gear sets that Days is still not going to be particularly useful for you. And crit damage. So okay-ish stuff. Not great. I honestly wish they'd change this up just a little bit. It's always been these sets and whatever the event dungeon set is, and they're all bad. So it would be nice if there was something else okay in here. Maybe something like Reflex, maybe Provoke. Doesn't have to be one of the top tier sets, but, you know, maybe even Shield set. Maybe something like that would be nice in here instead of some of these things. But, you know, it is what Polarium does, and so we just will live with it. And to be fair, you don't have a worry about if you're getting your accessories from here, and there's a 25% chance to get accessories versus getting normal gear as well. Well, 25% of the time you are getting chronophage gear, period. And that means that this can be very viable to farm overall, and especially considering early on, chronophage gear is going to be straight up better than gear you're getting from Spider, definitely at the same level. Now, you know, you might also get a couple of other pieces that might be really good in the regular set. And since the regular set is not total trash, keeping some of those pieces can be very helpful, especially because if you're going to have one piece of offset, well, if that one piece of offset is a chronophage set, and then you only need one piece of chronophage accessories to get that extra speed, which means you might be able to then layer on 2-piece feral or 2-piece pinpoint or something else to get additional points of speed or additional other effects that you might want. So as far as teams are concerned, this is my very, very free-to-play friendly Shred 30 team. Not really. It's the only one I've actually gotten reliably working. I have gotten other teams to work occasionally. I have seen burn teams that are supposed to be pretty interesting to work with. I've been told I can use certain champions that will work very well for them, and I have found that they cannot reliably beat down the waves so that Euros can solo the boss. And that is the theory of this particular team here. Euros is super easy overall to build into a super tanky form, and you need a super tanky form for 30. So Lazarus gives me the additional speed and turn meter, and the turn meter reduction of all the enemies is actually kind of important here. Now, the faction unity champion for the Shadowkin cannot have his turn meter decreased, I believe, and he will eventually take a turn pretty quickly, but we'll get to why I can counter that with this particular team in general. And then we go to the Nest of Vipers. Block debuffs is very important because that prevents some of the block damage to coming up from Kyoku and other things as well. Plus, it actually removes all buffs from the enemies, which can can be very, very critical as well. And then you'll put block buffs on your team. That is less exciting just because, again, the faction unity boss has ways to get around actually placing fears through the block buffs. So that is a bit of an annoyance on him. Next up, as far as speed is concerned, is we have Marius. Marius will do his Galloping Thunder first, and this will stun the faction unity champion, who's the one who's going to have the highest turn meter on this team. And that is important because that champion will go before Marius does his next turn. And if you haven't stunned him, he will go take a turn, throw fears out there, and disrupt your team, regardless if you have block debuffs out there or not. So very, very frustrating. And this is why you want to have Marius doing the things he's going to do when he's doing them. Then, of course, you do the Death of Glory here, just do a bunch of damage here. And in general, this is kind of what we're going to do. Marius will do what he needs to do at any point in time, and he'll generally stun the boss, or not the boss, but he will generally stun the faction unity champion most of the time, just because I find most of the time the faction unity champion is the one with the most turn meter at almost any given time on the enemy team. Next up, we have Seer. We've got our clan banner off because I do not need the increased crit rate or the weaken. We are here for the Karma Burn. She has a 6-star Crushing Rend. She is in Savage gear. She is going fast with that high speed. You can see all of that crit damage at 345 crit damage. And we are going to have a bunch of buffs up because Marius is throwing a bunch of buffs up there. There is a chance that Lazarus may get a second turn before she actually gets a chance to go. So we might get that block debuffs up there as well. The enemy has a chance to put up some buffs as well. So Seer should strip them with a 416 accuracy. And she should do enough damage to kill all, if not almost all, of the enemy team with this particular build. It still can be a little sketchy just because these guys have all kinds of random things going on. All it takes is a couple of different 3% chances, and this could go sideways. I have generally found that's part of the reason that Lazarius is very, very critical here as well. Lazarius has this passive where every 3 turns he revives somebody if they die. So that gives me some additional survivability on this to get other people back up if they die too early. Finally, we have Carnage. Carnage is, technically not faster than Seer, but I find that Carnage tends to go before Seer generally does anyway, for whatever reason, So it's weird, but it works well. This is my arena build, so he's got Stone Skin and Lethal on, and I have enough accuracy to be able to land debuffs. He is fully booked as well, so he's got less accuracy than you might think you need, but I am absolutely worried about getting this block passive skill out on Harima. And the good news is he will target Harima and get that block passive skill out there. Now, he won't necessarily crit versus Harima, at least the first hit of this won't crit, but the block passive skills means you're no longer going to have the halving of ignore defense, which is going to allow Seer to wipe the waves pretty easily. Plus, it will also actually help with Marius. My Marius happens to have a Cat's Gaze on him, so that's going to help with Marius doing some damage as well. And then finally, if he's still alive by the time he gets around to it, I want him to shift forms, and then I want him to be doing his big AoE attacks to kind of just knock down the rest of the ads before we kind of lose out. And then finally, my Eurost here, he is in a ton of HP gear. He's got good speed. I do actually have him in HP boots with, I believe, a speed blessing and speed substats to get to that very high speed. He's got enough accuracy. And the most important part of his build is the golden elixir right here. So this really is the quintessential relic for any solo champion. Wearers instantly healed by 10% of their HP when their HP drops below 50%. But as I've leveled this thing up to plus 12, it is now level 4, so I am getting 16% from that. That is so huge, because what that basically means is that unless they knock me down to more than 16% below Eurost's max HP, I am going to be able to regenerate above 50% and then do it again. So that is free bonus healing every time I go below 50%, unless I get knocked too far below. And that is why I still have him in regeneration and immortal gear. You probably could put him in stalwart gear with some immortal gear as well if you'd rather do that. That might make it a little bit easier, but Shredder does a lot of single target damage, so I think the extra healing overall is going to be very, very viable for you. And again, I've got, okay, I guess these are HP ascended, but they've got triple roll and speed, defense ascended, flat HP. I wish these were percentage, either HP or defense percentage. and I've got everything ascended as much as I can to get all the extra stats I need. I even have a revenge ring here because what Euros does is he gives me a shield on the A1, which is great for this emergency heal. So if this shield goes away, I get some healing based off of, and to be fair, for him, it's only 3% of his max HP, so it's not big. I really wish this was at least a 3-star blessing, not a 1-star blessing. That would make a huge difference. But it's still free healing if the shield goes away. So we're stacking up a ton of free healing when it's not even his turn. We also, of course, have a stun and decrease speed on this ability. We're not using it for this fight. He's got an ally protection and strengthen. We're not using it in this fight either. This is one way to actually get him killed with AoEs if you're really worried about it. But if that said, if he is faster than your Seeker, then maybe you might want to use this ability first so that Seeker has a couple of extra buffs to strip to be able to do more damage. But that's going to depend on your builds and how fast you are. But what makes Euros go is the fact that he's going to be putting poisons up. And when he's putting these poisons up, the poisons are doing damage, but it's also increasing his max HP by 5%, maximum of 50% against bosses. So he's going to increase his max HP, and that is max HP once he's in the fight. So it's not based off this 24k, it's based off of his 134 or 135k effectively here. So he can get 50% more max HP from this. And that means that the regeneration and the immortal gear and anything that heals based off of his max HP is scaling so much higher that it gives him an amazing amount of tankability and the amazing ability to take damage from the boss. So then he's basically throwing poisons against the boss, and the boss is going to kill themselves by slowly but surely dying from the poisons. Now, you don't want to ignore defense entirely either. See, I've got 3.5k defense here as well. Defense is going to scale down the damage you are going to be taking, even if Shredder has some ignored defense abilities as well. You still want some ability to knock that damage down. If you don't have enough defense, all the HP in the world is not going to help you because they're still going to hit and do a ton of damage. So good defense is great. I found that I would like to build him a little slower because building him a little slower means he's taking less turns, means that you're getting more poisons on. It's basically saving you the time it takes for him to take a turn, speeding up the runs. But having him to be 200-ish speed has proven to be a good balance because it gives him a chance to do regeneration occasionally and get that shield up with that A1. But also, if you notice here, I have the revenge ring. That is another reason to get revenge accessories on him as well, especially if you're going to have a bigger version of this emergency heal. But even without the emergency heal, the fact that he can get a very, very chunky shield, 10% of his max HP for 2 turns, that when he's got almost 200k HP, is a 20,000k shield. That's not bad for mitigating damage on a champion you want to survive. So getting those extra shields out there, so maybe having this could be very, very helpful for you to overall keep those shields up and keep him healing. So we've got the builds here. You've seen most of the speeds I've got on here. Run this one quickly, and I will cut to the end of this stuff here, but there's a lot of RNG in this involved. But as you can see, Marius immediately does his counterattack because he gets a turn meter drain, because that's what the faction unity champion does. And we're already back to having buffs on everybody else as well. So that's where Lazarius' ability to strip some of this stuff is going to come off. But hey, look at that. We got the decreased defense out there and, managed to kill some of these champions. But not everybody, but we got the Harima down. And from here, we should be okay. It's going to be kind of, no, maybe not. As I said, there's a little bit of RNG involved in this fight, and this one I have still not been able to make 100%. But we'll try that one more time, and hopefully this time it will run just a little bit smoother. Here we go. We've got some of the counterattacking going on. We should have Carnage doing his thing in just a second. There, he locked everybody out. There we go. Seer actually got everybody this time, which means we're in good shape now. So now at this point in time, we're just waiting for Shredder to kill himself against Euros. Yeah, these guys are going to keep on getting up occasionally, and that's going to speed up the run overall. But at the same time, since they're no longer hitting Euros, they're not going to get poisoned until they get these guys down. So, all right, we're about 43 seconds in, and we've downed everybody in the waves. We'll skip to where we finished the boss. All right, so we're nearing the end of the run here. We're almost 4 minutes into the run. We've got a bunch of poisons on him. He should probably die on his next turn. There we go. 3 minutes, 41 seconds. Honestly, one of the faster runs. As you can see, I do have a better best time, but that was with a team that was less than 50% win rate, so that's certainly not a team worth dealing with. Is this team 100%? Well, no, you already saw that this team is not 100%, but this team is certainly 95%. If you're really worried about farming stage 30, you'll kind of live with that 95%. I probably could drop this down to stage 29 and be 100%, which is probably a slightly safer way to run it. Or you could use one of these other teams and farm 25 or 20. 20 is going to be more energy efficient and definitely help you in Dungeon Divers just a little bit better. And 25 is kind of a midpoint. Unfortunately, once you're farming 25, you probably want to be farming as high a level as possible. But I'll show you a team on 25 and I'll show you a team on 20. Okay, so for stage 25, I have attempted to make this a much more accessible team. As you can see, in addition to using Seer, I am using Geomancer, who's a certainly more accessible epic, and I'm using a Deacon Armstrong. But honestly, you could probably use High Katoon in place of Deacon Armstrong as well. Deacon just happened to be built well, and I think Deacon does the job a little bit better because he steals some turn meter in addition to granting turn meter to my team. So the speed aura in the beginning, the turn meter steal and add is going to be helpful. What are you worried about with this particular set of waves is you are worried about Uko stealing some of your buffs occasionally, because he will tend to do that, and he will protect them, so you will not be able to strip them with Seer, so that can certainly be a little disruptive. And then you are worried about Lady Kimmy. If you debuff Lady Kimmy too much, she gets additional turn meter every time she is debuffed. So Lady Kimmy right here can jump in turn if you're not careful with her, and she's already naturally very, very fast. So you have to be careful of those two. And then Norag, you cannot stun him. So if you bring anybody in for control, Norag cannot be stunned or controlled in any way, shape, or form, so you do have to be careful with that. That said, I like the fact that we got, basically Bebop and Rocksteady of sorts with Norag and Uko right here on this team, so I definitely appreciate Polarium's commitment to the bit here with Shredder here. So let's go take a look at the team setup for this one. All right, so the good news for this one is that the team setup is very simple. Deacon is smart. Deacon will always do his time compression and then his sweeping retribution. So he'll get the turn meter fill and decrease and then grant an extra turn, and then he will decrease everyone's defense. Lydia generally goes next. She's got a good speed. She does her right thing, which is put the decreased defense, weaken, strengthen, and increase speed up as well. We do have Geomancer as I believe the next fastest on this team here. I have prioritized his Quicksand Grasp, and as long as he lands this on Shredder, this is easy. And if he doesn't land it on Shredder, well, he, has to get around to landing it again. Now, I have got this particular Geomancer built in Regeneration and Immortal with the Elixir, and the Elixir is what keeps him alive. He can begrudgingly kind of stay alive if I'm not careful, but that's part of where Syl is in here for. Syl is basically to give this some level of additional sanity in case something really goes wrong. I have a revive if I need it. If not, she's got an AoE stun, which will take care of everybody but Norag, and she's giving some passive healing as well. Very useful overall, and if she stays alive and I don't need her, that's great. And if I do need her, she brings some good utility to the team. And then finally, of course, we all know what Seer does. I've got her clan banner turned off. We are focusing on the Karma Burn because we want to down as many of the waves and the ads, I guess, as possible. And then once those are down, we are going to basically focus our damage on Shredder, and Geomancer is going to hopefully tank and kill Geomancer. The good news is because his Quicksand Grasp reflects damage without actually needing to be hit. If these other folks stay alive, Shredder's basically doing more damage to himself with that Quicksand Grasp. So this one runs pretty quickly. It's a stage 25 team. It probably goes all the way to stage 27 because these are the people you fight up until stage 28. Stage 28 and 29 and 30 are where you get the faction unity champions and the team that I showed you on stage 30. This team, I don't know exactly when it starts. I could certainly check, but it's definitely on 25 and it goes up until 27. So if this team could beat 27, this would be a good team to farm on 27 versus 25. But I'm going to show it off on 25 just to kind of let you see what it runs here. So we get the decreased defense from Deacon and the turn meter. We get the weaken, and then Seer nukes everybody down. There's a chance that she may not do down Mighty Uko, but that's again one of the nice things about having Lydia. If Mighty Uko does actually do his revive, then, Lydia's going to keep everyone down. But since everyone's actually kind of staying alive for the most part, as you can see, Geomancer is definitely in great shape with HP and everyone else, but other people die. I'm not really worried about it too much. It doesn't really bother me because as long as Geo can stay alive, we can win this fight. But the more these guys stay alive, the better this is going to go. There we go. 43 seconds. I got, a reward out of it. Not a big deal. Let's go take a look at floor 20 and see what I brought for floor 20. One addition here, if you're not able to build a Geomancer to survive this, Euros is a very viable option for this team as well, because eventually what should happen, if you're struggling to get Geomancer to stay alive, the rest of this team is probably going to struggle to stay alive as well. So that means that Euros will be easier to keep alive in this team, which means you can basically build a team similar to what I had on stage 30, using Euros to overall do all the damage to Shredder. And, it'll probably be a little bit slower than Geomancer will be on this one, but it is certainly a viable option for you. It does not have to be Geomancer. Anybody with poisons, honestly, a Taragi would be another option for you as well. Taragi is going to work very similarly to Euros, other than he's not going to continue to grow his shield, which means you're going to, he's not going to be able to grow his max HP, which means you're probably not going to be able to turn off his A3, which is a fairly massive chunky heal. But otherwise, if you can, it's a viable option as well. Taragi is another way you could certainly farm Shredder with a passive poison him until he's dead. And for stage 20, I decided to bring out, some different champions here. So as far as accessibility is concerned, we've got a Deacon here. Yes, my Deacon's a +4, 5-star, empowered, yada, yada. He's a Deacon. He doesn't need to be stupid fast. Mine is, but he doesn't need to be. Syl in Relentless, very helpful. She's actually here for the stuns now and the healing. As you can see, her more prominent place in the team. Drexstar is here to give you some provokes, and so basically if I'm not getting the stuns out, maybe he'll be provoked and provoked a couple people that will actually go and attack him instead. That also means he's going to be putting out some burns. Artak is there to put out burns and then ignite them. That can technically be any burner. Artak is just a really good one, and the one I happen to have built. You probably don't even need the resistance that I have built on him. We'll talk about the build in a little bit, but you are going to want probably a burner that's going to be healing and regenerating. Honestly, you probably could do this just solo with Drexstar in good regeneration gear to basically continue to heal himself. Plus with his A1, he will ignite people again with that A1 and be able to heal himself with that A1, because that A1 can do healing, especially if there is a burning champion on the other side. And then finally, Hoskaril, he's just a 75% AoE stun chance. So I brought another control champion to kind of help control and corral the waves as best I possibly could. So let's go take a look at the builds quickly. So again, there's my Deacon. Here's my Syl. She is in Relentless. Drexstar is in a mix of random gear. He might have a little bit of healing. He might not. I'm honestly not 100% sure. But as long as he has enough accuracy and a decent amount of defense and HP, he should be just fine to finish soloing this. But you're probably going to want to put him in regeneration, or at least bolster maybe or something like that, to give him some extra healing on top of his A1, which gives him a bunch of extra healing here. As you can see here as well, we've got the Burning Lash, which I want him to do at least once, and honestly I think I want him to do once and then don't do it again, just in case I need him to solo at the end for Shredder. That way he will keep on putting up the burns with this Fiery Blood, and the burns are going to slowly but surely whittle down the boss. Geomancer also still works in this team instead of Drexstar, for example, here. Euros also works in this team instead of Drexstar right here. I just figured I would build a team with a couple of different options for you. And then again, Artak is great because he ignites the burns, but if you don't have the burn ignition, that's fine. You could certainly possibly use a Cecia as well. She's going to be a lot squishier than an Artak, so you're going to want to try to keep her alive. But anybody that can put burns out there is going to be great. Anybody that ignites the burns is going to be even better. There are plenty of end game options. Artak was just a free champion a couple years ago, so I figured he might be a good one to show off here. And finally, Hoskaril, who was actually a fusion a couple of years ago. He was an epic fusion back when they did epic fusions occasionally. He's got the 50% bookable to 75% AoE stun on a 3-turn cooldown. Just a great skill overall. And then if he gets a second turn, he puts increased defense and increased resistance up. Not anything particularly exciting. The remove all stun, probably not a big deal, but if somebody gets stunned, it could be helpful. He himself is immune to stun, and damage to anybody that is stunned is higher, so it's not a bad thing overall. And he's got a stun in the A1 as well. But so maybe I could turn off that unfazed, but I kind of like it as an emergency valve way to protect everybody else on this team. So let's go run this team here. And again, this team pretty quick, but we're now talking on stage 20 here. So we get the decreased defense and we get some burns out, and now we can basically kind of start provoking and igniting things. And as people will take turns, you know, basically these ads will slowly but surely burn themselves away, which is great. And then finally Shredder will, you know, hopefully die. So got all the ads down, and from here it's basically solo and hope we can kind of outburn the boss. Now, he does have ways to damage mitigate the burn, so this is not the fastest thing to go either, but it's just another way. And to be fair, burns are pretty solid at getting down the waves. As I mentioned, I tried a burn team on stage 30, and I know a couple people that swear by teams that allow you to burn down everybody else and then just leave with the boss and solo the boss. I've not really been able to make that work, but you know, your mileage may vary. It's going to depend on your roster, your account, and your gear as well. But as you can see, this team, you know, not super fast, but we've never really been in a lot of danger. And again, it might just be because I have outgeared this level on most of these champions, but you could certainly do this with a lot less gear. So, you know, Sill's going to be great for this. Haikatoon could certainly work instead of a Deacon. Anybody that can help you with some control is going to be helpful overall. On my free-to-play, for example, I recall using Fabian in the previous team, and I think Fabian would work fine in the Deacon Armstrong slot for here. Directstar is going to be helpful, but anybody that can put up some passive poisons and possibly provoke could be good. So again, a Taragi the Frog could be very helpful here as well. AoE burns could be anybody. It doesn't have to be something that can ignite it. So you've got Artak, but it could be a Tyrant, it could be a Mordecai, and finally additional control. Well, again, additional control is nice. So if Hoskarol isn't an option for you, maybe you can't stun everybody, maybe you're looking for more provoke champions, or maybe you're just looking for ways to increase your speed and decrease the enemy's speed. So maybe it might be something like, again, a Haikatoon, a Morrigan, something like that to keep your speed going while you do all the rest of your abilities and basically try to keep the other team from inflicting damage to you before they die. So there you go, the Shredder event dungeon in a nutshell. A couple different strategies for you. Honestly, if you're just getting to 20, find a team that works. It doesn't have to be one of these strategies. These are just strategies that I found to be helpful, but build a team that can work for you with the champions you have and farm stage 20. It's not a bad thing to be farming on occasionally. And again, the ability to get 10% speed on accessories cannot be enforced enough with how good that is. So you should be farming Pinpoint if you can. You should be farming this if you can. Not necessarily going all out on it, but it is definitely worth spending some of your energy farming, especially when we're not in the middle of fusion, and you can occasionally choose to, say, not go into Dragon or not go into Ice Golem, or even not go into Spider, and instead go into the event dungeon. If the event dungeon you're farming at a similar level, you'll get Dungeon Diver points out of it anyway, and you'll get gear that will probably help your account for a long time to come. So, hey, let me know what you think of the gear buff, what you think of the dungeon, what do you think of some of these teams? Let me know what you guys are running down below. I would love to see it, and on top of that, it might help somebody else who's kind of looking for some other teams to run in the event dungeon. So, you know, share your teams. Let's be a wonderful community about that. Share our resources. Hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate you guys. You guys are absolutely amazing. One of the best communities in all of gaming, and definitely one of the best communities in Raid. You know, I appreciate you guys, and I'm glad I can, you know, make videos like this to hopefully entertain you and educate you and help you have some fun playing Raid Shadow Legends. So until the next video, I am Bront CatHerder.